The sound of an iron hammer striking shackles echoed through the dusty auction yard in Silver Creek, Colorado, 1876, as Faith Henderson stood trembling on the wooden platform, her honey blonde hair matted with dust and her blue eyes reflecting a storm of rage and terror. She had been reduced to nothing more than merchandise, despite the abolition of slavery 11 years prior, caught in a web of corruption that still festered in the lawless corners of the frontier. Adam Hayes watched from the back of the crowd, his weathered Stetson pulled low over his eyes, one hand resting on his holstered Colt, the other gripping the saddle horn of his chestnut stallion. At 32, he'd seen plenty of injustice in his years as a Texas Ranger turned bounty hunter, but the sight of a young woman being sold like cattle made his blood run cold. "Next up, gentlemen," the auctioneer bellowed, his voice carrying across the yard where nearly 40 men had gathered. A fine specimen, 20 years old, healthy, and with all her teeth. He grabbed Faith's jaw roughly, forcing her mouth open as if she were a horse. "Good for cooking, cleaning, and whatever else you might fancy." A wave of laughter rippled through the crowd. Faith tried to wrench her face away, earning a sharp slap that Adam could hear from where he stood. Her eyes, defiant despite the circumstances, scanned the crowd before landing briefly on him. Something in that gaze, perhaps recognition of the disgust etched on his face, made Adam straighten his spine. "Bidding starts at $50, the auctioneer announced. "50, called a voice from the front. "60, shouted another. Adam pushed through the crowd, his spurs jingling with each determined step. The voices around him faded as he approached the platform, his focus narrowing to the young woman whose wrists were raw from the restraints. $100. Yelled a portly man with a handlebar mustache, adorned in a suit that screamed of new mining money. $150, countered a grizzled rancher, the auctioneer's face lit up with greedy delight. $150 going once, this stops now. Adam's voice cut through the yard like a knife, silencing the crowd. He reached the front of the platform, looking up at the auctioneer with cold fury. "She's not for sale," the auctioneer sneered. "This is a legitimate business transaction, mister. Either bid or step aside." Adam's hand moved to his badge, which he kept pinned inside his vest. He didn't flash it, merely confirmed it was there. Then his eyes moved to Faith, who was staring at him with a mixture of hope and suspicion. $200. Shouted the mining man, annoyed at the interruption. $300, countered someone else, the auctioneer's grin widened. "Now we're talking. $300 going once," I said, Adam repeated, his voice dangerously quiet as he stepped onto the platform. "This stops now." He turned to address the crowd. "Slavery ended with the war, gentlemen. This woman is free by law." "She ain't a slave," the auctioneer protested. "She's an indentured servant paying off her daddy's debts." Faith's voice finally broke through, raspy but clear. "That's a lie." "My father never owed anyone a cent in his life," the mining man laughed. "Well, he does now that he's dead. Signed the papers himself." Adam looked to Faith, who shook her head vehemently. "Forgery," she mouthed. The crowd was growing restless, some men grumbling about interference, others shifting uncomfortably as Adam's words reminded them of the illegality of what they were participating in. $500, the mining man shouted, determined to win. "That's my final offer." The auctioneer looked triumphantly at Adam. $500 going once. Adam drew his Colt in one fluid motion, aiming it at the sky before firing a single shot that scattered birds from the nearby cottonwoods. The crowd fell silent as the echo faded. "She's worth more than all your gold," Adam declared, holstering his weapon and reaching for Faith's shackles. "And she's not property to be bought or sold." The auctioneer stepped back, his confidence wavering as Adam produced a small key one he'd taken from a similar operation he'd shut down in Dodge City. It wasn't the exact match, but with a bit of jimmying, the lock gave way. Faith rubbed her wrists, staring at Adam with astonishment. "Who are you?" she whispered. Before he could answer, the mining man stormed onto the platform, flanked by two rough-looking companions. "You can't just take what I've rightfully purchased." Adam positioned himself between Faith and the men. Mr. Holbrook, he said, recognizing the mining magnate from wanted posters, she was never yours to purchase. And I believe there are folks in 3 counties who'd like to talk to you about your business practices. Holbrook's face darkened with recognition. Hayes, he spat, the ranger. Former ranger, Adam corrected. Now I just hunt men who think they're above the law. A tense silence fell over the auction yard. Adam was acutely aware of Faith behind him, of her ragged breathing and the slight movement as she inched closer to his back, instinctively seeking protection. This isn't over, Holbrook threatened, backing away. For today it is, Adam replied evenly. He turned to Faith, speaking low. Can you ride? She nodded, determination replacing fear in her eyes. Get me out of here and I'll outride the devil himself. Adam allowed himself a small smile, impressed by her spirit. He guided her down from the platform, keeping his body between her and the crowd, which was now dispersing as men tried to avoid association with the failed auction. His chestnut stallion, Thunder, stood waiting. Adam helped Faith mount, then swung up behind her. He could feel her tense at the proximity, but there was no time for propriety. Hold tight, he murmured, and she gripped the saddle horn as he urged Thunder into a gallop, leaving Silver Creek and its corruption behind in a cloud of dust. They rode hard for nearly an hour, following the winding path of a creek that led away from town and toward the mountains. Adam kept alert for any sign of pursuit, but it seemed Holbrook wasn't eager to challenge him in the open, at least not yet. When they reached a small clearing shaded by aspens, Adam finally slowed Thunder to a walk. We should be safe enough to rest here, he said, dismounting and helping Faith down. She stumbled slightly as her feet touched the ground, her legs stiff from the ride and her previous confinement. Adam caught her elbow to steady her, and she looked up at him with those striking blue eyes that had first caught his attention. Thank you, she said simply, though the words carried the weight of a life saved. Adam nodded, suddenly awkward now that the immediate danger had passed. You're welcome, Miss Henderson. Faith's eyebrows rose. You know my name. I've been tracking Holbrook's operation for weeks, Adam explained, leading Thunder to the creek to drink. Your name was on a list of merchandise that I found in a raid on one of his associates. Faith's face hardened at the word merchandise, but she followed him to the water's edge. My father was the sheriff in Willow Springs, she said, kneeling to splash cool water on her face. He was investigating cattle rustling when he was killed. 3 days later, men came to our home claiming he'd borrowed money. When I couldn't produce the money, they took me. Adam's jaw tightened. It was a story he'd heard variations of before lawmen who got too close to criminal operations ending up dead, their families left vulnerable. I'm sorry about your father, he said quietly. Faith looked up, water dripping from her chin. Are you really a Texas Ranger? Adam corrected, filling his canteen. I turned in my badge last year, got tired of the politics, the compromises. Now I hunt bounties men like Holbrook who think the law doesn't apply to them. And what will you do with me? Faith asked, a note of wariness returning to her voice. Adam met her gaze steadily. Get you somewhere safe. Do you have family you can go to? Faith shook her head. No one. It was just Pa and me after Ma died of the fever 5 years ago. Adam considered this, watching as she attempted to smooth her tangled hair. Despite the dirt and exhaustion, there was a dignity about her that impressed him. Most women would be hysterical after what she'd endured, but Faith Henderson had a core of steel. I know a place, he finally said. A ranch about 2 days' ride from here. The woman who runs it, Mrs. Daniels, takes in folks who need a fresh start. You'd be safe there while you figure out your next steps. Faith considered his offer, suspicion still evident in her posture. And what do you get out of this, Mr. Hayes? Adam, he corrected. And I get the satisfaction of knowing Holbrook didn't win today. He paused, then added more softly, no one deserves to be treated like property, Miss Henderson. Faith, she returned. After what you did back there, I think we can dispense with formalities. Adam nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. Fair enough, Faith. As the sun began its descent toward the mountains, Adam set about making camp. Faith insisted on helping, gathering firewood while he hunted a rabbit for their supper. By the time darkness fell, they had a small fire crackling and meat roasting on improvised spits. Faith watched Adam as he tended the fire, studying the man who had risked his life for a stranger. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair that curled slightly at the nape of his neck. His face was weathered from years in the sun, with a strong jaw shadowed by stubble and eyes the color of warm amber. He moved with the easy confidence of a man accustomed to handling himself in dangerous situations. "Why did you do it?" she asked suddenly. "Back in Silver Creek. You could have been killed." Adam was quiet for a moment, turning the rabbit to cook the other side. "I've seen too many people hurt by men like Holbrook," he finally said. "Men who think money gives them the right to own others. After the war, I thought we were done with that kind of thinking." Faith nodded, understanding in her eyes. "My father fought for the Union. He believed in freedom for all people, regardless of color or circumstance. He taught me the same." "Sounds like a good man," Adam said, serving her a portion of the rabbit. "He was," Faith confirmed, accepting the food gratefully. "The best." She took a bite, savoring the simple meal after days of near starvation. "What about your family?" Adam's expression grew distant. "Lost my parents to cholera when I was 15. Raised my younger sister on our small farm in Texas until she married. She's in San Antonio now with 3 children and a husband who treats her well." "You miss her," Faith observed. "Every day," Adam admitted, "but knowing she's safe and happy makes the distance bearable." They ate in companionable silence as night settled fully around them. The fire cast dancing shadows across the clearing, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote called to its pack. "We should get some rest," Adam said when they'd finished eating. "We've got a long ride ahead tomorrow." He offered Faith his bedroll, but she insisted they share it, arguing that the nights were cold and neither of them should have to sleep on the bare ground. Adam reluctantly agreed, though he positioned himself carefully at the edge of the blanket, maintaining a respectful distance. As they lay there, watching stars appear in the vast Colorado sky, Faith spoke again, her voice soft with exhaustion. "I never thought I'd be free again. When they put those shackles on me, I thought that was the end of my life." Adam turned his head to look at her profile, illuminated by firelight. "It was the beginning of a new one," he said quietly. Faith met his gaze, her eyes reflecting the flames. "Yes," she agreed, "I suppose it was." With that thought, she closed her eyes and soon fell into the deep sleep of the truly exhausted. Adam remained awake longer, his mind turning over the events of the day and the strange twist of fate that had brought this remarkable woman into his path. Eventually, lulled by the gentle sounds of the wilderness, he too drifted off, his hand resting on his Colt just in case. Dawn broke with the chorus of birdsong and the gentle rustling of aspens in the morning breeze. Adam woke first, accustomed to rising with the sun after years on the trail. He was momentarily startled to find Faith curled against his side, seeking warmth in the cool mountain air. Her face in sleep was peaceful, the worry lines that had marked her brow the previous day now smoothed away. Adam carefully extricated himself, not wanting to wake her. She needed the rest, and they had a few minutes before they needed to start moving. He rekindled the fire and set coffee to boil, using the last of his supplies. The aroma eventually roused Faith, who sat up with a momentary look of panic before her eyes found Adam and recognition dawned. "Morning," he said, offering her a tin cup of the strong, black coffee. She accepted it gratefully, wrapping her hands around the warm metal. "Thank you for everything." Adam nodded, uncomfortable with gratitude. "We should reach Cottonwood Creek by nightfall if we ride steady," he said, changing the subject. "There's a small town there where we can resupply and get you some proper clothes." Faith looked down at her tattered dress, a flush of embarrassment coloring her cheeks. "I must look a fright." "You look like someone who survived," Adam corrected gently. "That's nothing to be ashamed of." Faith met his eyes, a small smile playing at her lips. "You're not what I expected, Adam Hayes. And what did you expect?" he asked, curious despite himself. "I don't know," she admitted. "Someone rougher, perhaps, less kind." Adam wasn't sure how to respond to that, so he busied himself with dousing the fire and preparing thunder for their journey. Faith helped in companionable silence, and soon they were mounted and heading northwest, following the creek toward the distant mountains. The day passed in alternating periods of conversation and comfortable quiet. Faith told Adam more about her life in Willow Springs, how she'd helped her father keep the sheriff's office organized, how she'd taught herself to read law books so she could assist with his cases, how she'd dreamed of perhaps becoming a teacher someday. In turn, Adam shared stories of his years as a ranger, carefully selecting tales that showcased the good they'd done rather than the violence he'd witnessed. He told her about tracking rustlers across the Llano Estacado, about rescuing children taken by renegades, about the satisfaction of seeing justice served in lawless territories. As the sun began its descent, the landscape changed, transitioning from open prairie to more forested terrain. The air grew cooler as they gained elevation, and Faith shivered slightly against Adam's chest. "Not much further," he assured her, pointing ahead to where a thin column of smoke rose above the trees. "That's Cottonwood Creek." The town was small, just a single street with a general store, saloon, blacksmith, and a modest boarding house. A few houses clustered around these establishments, and chickens pecked in the dirt as they rode in. Curious eyes watched their arrival, but no one approached them directly. Adam helped Faith dismount in front of the general store, then tied Thunder to the hitching post. "Wait here," he instructed. "I'll see about getting you some supplies." Faith nodded, though he could see she was nervous about being left alone. "I'll be right inside if you need me," he assured her. The store was well stocked for such a small town, and the proprietor, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, immediately took an interest in Faith's situation. "Poor dear looks like she's been through the ringer," Mrs. Collins observed, watching through the window as Faith waited outside. "What happened to her?" Adam gave a simplified version of events, explaining that Faith had been kidnapped and he'd helped her escape. Mrs. Collins clicked her tongue sympathetically. "We've heard about those operations," she said, shaking her head. "Disgraceful, especially after all the blood spilled to end such practices." She began gathering items before Adam could even request them: a sturdy dress, undergarments, a warm shawl, boots, and personal items a woman might need. "There's a room in the back where she can wash up and change," Mrs. Collins offered, "and my husband can draw a bath if she'd like." Adam thanked her and went to fetch Faith, who nearly wept at the kindness shown to her. While she was bathing and changing, Adam arranged for rooms at the boarding house and stabled Thunder for the night. When Faith emerged from the back room of the general store, Adam almost didn't recognize her. The dirt and grime were gone, revealing fair skin with a light dusting of freckles across her nose. Her honey blonde hair, now clean and brushed, fell in soft waves to her shoulders. The new dress, a simple blue calico that matched her eyes, fit her slender frame properly. "You look." Adam started, then found himself at a loss for words. Faith smiled shyly. "Better, I hope." "Much," he agreed, finding his voice. "Are you hungry?" They ate a simple meal at the boarding house stew, fresh bread, and apple pie served by the owner's wife, who fussed over Faith as if she were a long-lost daughter. The other guests, a traveling salesman and an elderly couple visiting their son in the next town over, politely ignored the obvious signs that Faith had recently been in distress. After dinner, they sat on the small porch of the boarding house, watching as stars appeared in the darkening sky. Faith seemed transformed by the bath, clean clothes, and good food, her spirit visibly lightening with each passing hour. "Tell me about this ranch we're heading to," she requested, rocking gently in a creaking chair. Adam leaned against the porch railing, rolling a cigarette with practiced ease. "It's called Willow Haven. Mrs. Daniels started it after the war when her husband didn't come home. She took in war widows at first, then expanded to anyone needing a fresh start, women escaping bad situations, mostly. She runs cattle, grows crops, has a small orchard. It's a good place, peaceful. And she just takes people in, without question." Faith sounded skeptical. "She's a good judge of character," Adam explained, lighting his cigarette, "and she owes me a favor." I brought her son home when he got himself into trouble in Dodge City a few years back. Faith considered this, watching the smoke curl from Adam's cigarette into the night air. What will I do there? Whatever you want, Adam said simply. Mrs. Daniels will give you a place to stay, work if you want it. You can save money, figure out your next steps. No one will bother you there. Faith was quiet for a long moment. And you, where will you go after you deliver me? Adam hadn't thought that far ahead. His original plan had been to continue tracking Holbrook's operation, but now he felt strangely reluctant to part ways with Faith. I haven't decided, he admitted. Faith nodded as if his answer confirmed something for her. Well, I'm grateful for whatever time you can spare to see me safely there. The air between them felt charged suddenly, filled with unspoken possibilities. Adam found himself studying the curve of her jaw, the way the lamplight from inside the boarding house cast golden highlights in her hair. Faith rose from her chair, breaking the moment. I should rest. Tomorrow will be another long day. Yes, Adam agreed, straightening. I'll see you in the morning. She paused at the door, looking back at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Good night, Adam. Good night, Faith. As she disappeared inside, Adam remained on the porch, finishing his cigarette and pondering the strange turn his life had taken in just 24 hours. He had rescued women before in his line of work, had seen them safely to new beginnings. Why did this one feel different? Perhaps it was the quiet strength she exhibited, the dignity she maintained despite her circumstances. Or maybe it was the way she looked at him not as a savior to be worshipped or a dangerous man to be feared, but as a person worthy of knowing. Adam extinguished his cigarette and went inside, climbing the stairs to his own room. Tomorrow they would continue their journey, and he would have time to sort through these unexpected feelings. For now, it was enough to know that Faith Henderson was safe and that he had played a part in making it so. The second day of their journey began early, with a hearty breakfast provided by the boarding house. Faith appeared looking rested, her new clothes and clean appearance drawing appreciative glances from the other guests. Adam felt an unexpected surge of protectiveness, positioning himself between her and the curious stares. After breakfast, they visited the general store again to stock up on supplies. Mrs. Collins had prepared a small package for Faith, additional undergarments, a hairbrush, and other feminine necessities that made Faith blush with gratitude. It's not charity, dear, Mrs. Collins insisted when Faith tried to decline. It's just folks helping folks. That's how we survive out here. By mid-morning, they were back on the trail, though this time Faith rode her own mount, a gentle bay mare that Mrs. Collins's husband had been looking to sell. Adam had purchased it without hesitation, brushing aside Faith's protests about the cost. Consider it an investment in your future, he'd told her. A woman needs her own transportation out here. Now they rode side by side along a well-used trail that wound through increasingly mountainous terrain. The day was clear and cool, perfect for traveling, and Faith seemed to gain confidence with each mile. I used to ride with my father, she explained when Adam commented on her natural seat. He said a good horse was better protection than any gun. Your father was a wise man, Adam agreed. Though I prefer to have both, Faith smiled, patting her mare's neck affectionately. I named her Liberty, she said. It seemed fitting, Adam nodded, understanding the significance. A good name. They stopped at midday to rest the horses and eat a simple lunch of bread, cheese, and dried fruit purchased in Cottonwood Creek. As they sat beside a small stream, Faith grew pensive. What will happen to the other women, she asked suddenly, the ones Holbrook still has? Adam sighed, having wondered when she would ask this question. I don't know, he admitted. I've been gathering evidence against him for months, but he's careful, well-connected too. The local law is often in his pocket. Faith's expression hardened with determination. Then someone needs to stop him without the law. That's a dangerous path, Adam cautioned, one that could lead to you becoming as bad as he is. Is that what you tell yourself? Faith challenged. When you hunt bounties outside the law, Adam was taken aback by her directness. I still operate within the bounds of legal warrants, he said defensively. I bring men in to face justice, not to dispense it myself. Faith held his gaze steadily. And if the justice system fails, what then? It was a question Adam had wrestled with countless times. Then I keep trying, he said finally, because the alternative is to become what I've spent my life fighting against. Faith considered his words, then nodded slowly. I can respect that, she conceded, but it doesn't help the women who are suffering right now. No, Adam agreed heavily. It doesn't. They resumed their journey in thoughtful silence. Adam found himself impressed by Faith's moral clarity and her concern for others even when her own situation remained precarious. Most people in her position would be focused solely on their own survival. As the afternoon wore on, the trail began to climb more steeply, winding through stands of pine and aspen. The air grew noticeably cooler, and Faith pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders. We're getting close to the pass, Adam explained. Once we're through, it's about 3 hours to Willow Haven. Faith nodded, though Adam noticed she seemed less enthusiastic about their destination than she had the previous evening. He wondered if she was having second thoughts about going to the ranch. But before he could ask, the distinctive crack of a rifle shot echoed through the mountains. Faith's mare reared in panic as dirt kicked up inches from her hooves. Adam reacted instantly, drawing his Colt while simultaneously grabbing Liberty's reins to steady her. Into the trees, he commanded, steering both horses off the trail and into the dense forest to their right. 2 more shots followed, splintering bark from trees just above their heads. Adam pulled Thunder alongside Faith's mare, reaching over to help her dismount quickly. Stay low, he instructed, guiding her behind a large boulder while keeping hold of both horses' reins. Faith's face was pale but composed, her eyes scanning the ridge from where the shots had come. Holbrook. She whispered. Adam nodded grimly. Most likely, I should have expected he'd send men after us. He peered around the boulder, trying to locate their attackers. The mountainside above the trail was dotted with outcroppings and stands of trees, perfect cover for ambush. What do we do? Faith asked, her voice remarkably steady despite the danger. Adam weighed their options. We can't go back, they might have men on the trail behind us too. We need to keep moving forward but off the main trail. Faith nodded, trusting his judgment. I can ride through rough country, she assured him. Pa made sure I could handle myself in the wilderness. Adam gave her a brief, approving smile. Good, we'll follow this gully. He indicated a natural depression that ran roughly parallel to the trail but hidden from view by dense vegetation. It should take us to the pass by a different route. Stay close to me, and if I say drop, you hit the ground immediately. Understood, Faith confirmed, remounting Liberty with Adam's assistance. They set off through the forest, moving as quickly as the rough terrain allowed. Adam led the way, constantly scanning for signs of pursuit while guiding them through the safest path. Faith followed closely, demonstrating the riding skills she'd claimed by navigating fallen logs and steep inclines without complaint. For nearly 2 hours, they pushed on in tense silence, stopping occasionally to listen for pursuit. The shots had ceased, but Adam wasn't fooled Holbrook's men would be tracking them, possibly circling to cut them off at the pass. As they approached a small clearing, Adam held up his hand for Faith to stop. Wait here, he whispered, dismounting to scout ahead. He moved silently through the underbrush, years of tracking experience evident in his careful footsteps. At the edge of the clearing, he froze, spotting 3 mounted men on the far side. They were scanning the forest, rifles ready, clearly looking for signs of their quarry. Adam retreated to where Faith waited, her face questioning. 3 men blocking our path, he explained in hushed tones. We need to find another way around, Faith nodded, but then her eyes widened as she looked past Adam's shoulder. Before he could turn, the unmistakable sound of a hammer being cocked froze him in place. Well, drawled a voice from behind them. Looks like I found the lost sheep. Adam slowly raised his hands, cursing himself for not detecting the 4th man. He turned carefully to see a scruff-faced man in a dusty black coat aiming a shotgun at them. The man's yellowed teeth showed in a triumphant grin. Holbrook's offering a mighty fine reward for the girl, the man said. Even more for you, Hayes, dead or alive, but dead's easier to transport. Faith stiffened in her saddle but remained silent, her eyes on Adam as if waiting for his signal. You're making a mistake, Adam said calmly. Holbrook's going down for human trafficking. Anyone associated with him will hang. The man laughed. Ain't nobody going to hang Edmund Holbrook. He owns half the territory's judges. He jerked the shotgun. Now, both of you dismount nice and slow, Adam complied, sliding from Thunder's back while keeping his movements deliberate. Faith followed suit, her face set in determination rather than fear. Now, the girl's going to tie your hands, the man instructed, tossing a length of rope to Faith. And if you try anything heroic, I'll blow a hole in you big enough to ride a horse through. Faith caught the rope, moving toward Adam with apparent compliance. As she stepped behind him, ostensibly to bind his wrists, Adam felt her press something into his palm, the small knife he kept in his saddlebag for skinning game. She must have taken it while the man's attention was briefly on Adam. "Hurry up, girl," the man barked, growing impatient. "I'm trying," Faith replied, her voice deliberately tremulous as she pretended to fumble with the rope. "I've never tied anyone up before." The man took a step closer, his attention focused on Faith's apparent ineptitude. It was the opening Adam needed. In one fluid motion, he flicked the knife at the man's gun hand, then lunged forward. The blade struck true, embedding itself in the man's wrist. He howled in pain, the shotgun discharging harmlessly into the ground as Adam tackled him. They hit the forest floor hard, Adam's weight driving the breath from his opponent's lungs. The shotgun blast had alerted the other men. Shouts echoed from the clearing, followed by the sound of approaching horses. "Faith, run." Adam commanded as he struggled with the wounded man, who was still fighting despite the knife in his wrist. Instead of fleeing, Faith grabbed the fallen shotgun, checking that it still had one loaded barrel. She swung onto Liberty's back, then seized Thunder's reins as well. "Adam, come on." She called, guiding the horses toward him. Adam delivered a final blow that left his opponent unconscious, then sprinted to Thunder, vaulting into the saddle. As the other men burst into view, Faith raised the shotgun and fired, not aiming to hit them but to scatter their horses. The strategy worked. The mounts panicked at the sudden noise and flash, rearing and bucking as their riders struggled for control. In the confusion, Adam and Faith galloped away, plunging deeper into the forest. They rode hard for several miles, pushing the horses to their limits through the rough terrain. Only when they reached a rocky outcropping that offered some protection did Adam signal to stop, both mounts lathered and breathing heavily. That was. Adam began, turning to Faith with a mixture of admiration and exasperation. "Reckless, foolish," Faith supplied, a hint of defiance in her voice. "I wasn't going to leave you behind." Adam shook his head, a reluctant smile forming. "I was going to say impressive." "Where did you learn to shoot like that?" "Pa taught me," Faith said simply. "Said a woman on her own needs to know how to defend herself." She paused, her expression sobering. "Do you think we lost them?" Adam dismounted, helping Faith down as well. The horses needed rest, and they needed to assess their situation. "For now," he said, leading the animals to a small trickle of water flowing down the rocks. "But they'll pick up our trail eventually. We need to keep moving, find a less obvious route to the ranch." Faith nodded, helping to water the horses. "I'm sorry I got you into this," she said quietly. "Holbrook wouldn't be hunting you if you hadn't helped me." "He was already hunting me," Adam corrected her. "I've been disrupting his operations for months." "You just gave him an additional reason to want me dead." Faith looked unconvinced, guilt evident in her expression. Adam stepped closer, placing his hands gently on her shoulders. "Faith, listen to me. What happened back there, the way you handled yourself, that was remarkable. Most people would have panicked or frozen. You kept your head, you acted decisively, and you probably saved both our lives." Faith met his gaze, a hint of color rising in her cheeks at his praise. "We saved each other," she said softly. Something shifted between them in that moment, a recognition of partnership rather than protector and protected. Adam became acutely aware of how close they were standing, of the warmth of her shoulders beneath his hands, of the way her eyes seemed to hold the entire sky. Before he could process these thoughts, the distant sound of a horse nickering broke the spell. Adam stepped back, returning to alertness. "We need to move," he said, his voice rougher than he intended. "They're tracking us." They mounted up again, continuing their journey through the wilderness. Adam led them on a circuitous route, using every trick he knew to obscure their trail, crossing streams, doubling back, passing through rocky terrain that wouldn't hold tracks. By late afternoon, they had successfully navigated around the pass and were descending into a broad valley. In the distance, nestled against a backdrop of snow-capped peaks, lay a sprawling ranch with fields of golden hay and grazing cattle. "Willow Haven," Adam announced, pointing to the collection of buildings. Faith gazed at the ranch, emotions playing across her face: relief, anticipation, and something that might have been regret. "It looks peaceful," she observed. "It is," Adam assured her. "Mrs. Daniels runs a tight ship, but she's fair and kind. You'll be safe there." Faith nodded, though she seemed lost in thought as they made their final approach to the ranch. The sun was setting by the time they rode through the main gate, casting long shadows across the well-maintained grounds. A tall, silver-haired woman emerged from the main house as they dismounted, her weathered face breaking into a smile of recognition when she saw Adam. "Adam Hayes," she called, striding toward them with the energy of a much younger woman. "It's been too long." "Mrs. Daniels," Adam greeted her, accepting a brief hug. "Thank you for taking us in on such short notice." Mrs. Daniels turned her attention to Faith, her keen eyes taking in the young woman's appearance and demeanor in one comprehensive glance. "And this must be Miss Henderson." "Welcome to Willow Haven, my dear," Faith smiled tentatively. "Thank you for having me, Mrs. Daniels. I hope I won't be a burden." "Nonsense," the older woman dismissed the concern with a wave of her hand. "Any friend of Adam's is welcome here. Besides, we can always use another pair of capable hands." She gestured toward the house. "Come inside, both of you. You look like you've had a rough journey and supper's almost ready." As they followed Mrs. Daniels to the house, stable hands appeared to take care of their horses. Faith cast a concerned glance at Liberty, but Adam reassured her. "They'll take good care of her. These men know their business." The main house was spacious and comfortable, with polished wood floors and simple but elegant furnishings. Delicious aromas wafted from the kitchen, making both travelers suddenly aware of how hungry they were. Mrs. Daniels showed Faith to a small but cozy bedroom on the second floor. "Get cleaned up, dear. There's water in the pitcher, and I'll send up a girl with some towels. Supper's in half an hour." When Faith joined them downstairs later, she had washed away the dust of travel and brushed her hair until it shone. Adam, who had already cleaned up in a washroom off the kitchen, found himself momentarily speechless at the sight of her framed in the doorway, looking rested and almost radiant despite the trials of the day. Supper was a lively affair, with Mrs. Daniels introducing Faith to the other residents of Willow Haven, 3 women who worked on the ranch. 2 elderly men who had been cowhands in their younger days and now tended the vegetable gardens, and Mrs. Daniels's foreman, a taciturn but respectful man named Thomas. After the meal, while Faith was engaged in conversation with one of the women, Mrs. Daniels drew Adam aside onto the porch. "What kind of trouble are you bringing to my door, Adam?" she asked without preamble, her voice low but not accusatory. Adam sighed, knowing he couldn't hide the truth from her. "Edmund Holbrook," he said simply. "He had faith in one of his auctions. I got her out." Mrs. Daniels's face darkened. "Holbrook, I've heard rumors about his operations. Despicable man." She studied Adam's face. "He won't give up easily." "No," Adam agreed. "His men tracked us through the mountains. We lost them, but they'll keep looking," Mrs. Daniels finished for him. "You know I don't turn away those in need, Adam, but I have to think of everyone's safety." "I understand," Adam said, a weight settling in his chest at the thought of having to take Faith elsewhere. "We'll leave at first light." Mrs. Daniels cut him off with a raised hand. "I didn't say you had to leave. I said I have to think of everyone's safety, which is why you're going to help Thomas reinforce our defenses while the girl stays here." Adam blinked in surprise. "You're willing to stand against Holbrook?" The older woman's eyes flashed with determination. This ranch has weathered worse than the likes of Edmund Holbrook. We've fought off rustlers, survived blizzards and droughts, and stood our ground when land grabbers came calling with their lawyers and their threats. We're not about to cower now." Adam felt a surge of respect for this formidable woman. "Thank you," he said simply. Mrs. Daniels nodded, then fixed him with a penetrating look. "Now, there's something else we need to discuss. That girl in there isn't just another rescue to you, is she?" Adam shifted uncomfortably under her scrutiny. "What do you mean? Don't play dumb with me, young man," Mrs. Daniels chided. "I've known you too long. I saw the way you looked at her during supper, like she might disappear if you took your eyes off her for too long." Adam started to deny it, then sighed in resignation. "It's complicated, Mrs. Daniels. Love usually is," she replied matter-of-factly. "But that doesn't mean it's not worth pursuing." Before Adam could respond, the door opened and Faith stepped onto the porch. "There you are," she said, smiling uncertainly. "I thought perhaps you'd left without saying good night." Mrs. Daniels gave Adam a meaningful look, then excused herself. "I'll leave you two to talk. Good night, Faith, Adam." As the door closed behind her, Faith moved to stand beside Adam at the porch railing. The night was clear, stars blanketing the sky above the peaceful valley. "She's quite a woman," Faith observed. "I can see why you respect her so much." Adam nodded. "She's built something remarkable here. A place where people can heal, start over." Faith was quiet for a moment, then asked softly, "Will you be leaving tomorrow?" The question caught Adam off guard. He had been so focused on getting Faith to safety that he hadn't thought much beyond that goal. The logical next step would be to continue his pursuit of Holbrook, to gather the evidence needed to bring him to justice. And yet, "I'm not sure," he admitted. "Mrs. Daniels has asked me to stay for a while, help strengthen the ranch's defenses in case Holbrook sends men this way." Faith nodded, relief evident in her expression. "I'm glad," she said simply. I'm not ready to say goodbye yet." The admission hung in the air between them, honest and vulnerable. Adam turned to face her fully, drawn by something he couldn't quite name. "Faith," he began, not entirely sure what he wanted to say, but knowing he needed to say something. She looked up at him, moonlight silvering her hair and casting half her face in shadow. "Yes," words failed him. Instead, acting on instinct, Adam reached out and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her cheek. Faith leaned almost imperceptibly into his touch, her eyes never leaving his. The moment stretched, taut with possibility. Then, from inside the house, someone called Faith's name, breaking the spell. Faith stepped back, a flush rising to her cheeks. "I should go," she murmured. "It's been a long day." Adam nodded, letting his hand fall back to his side. "Good night, Faith." She hesitated, then quickly rose on tiptoe to press a soft kiss to his cheek. "Good night, Adam," she whispered, then turned and hurried inside, leaving him standing alone on the porch with the ghost of her touch still warming his skin. The days at Willow Haven fell into a rhythm that was both productive and peaceful. Adam worked with Thomas and the ranch hands to reinforce the perimeter, setting up watchpoints and ensuring everyone knew what to do if trouble came. Faith, meanwhile, quickly made herself useful around the ranch, helping in the kitchen, tending to the small orchard, and demonstrating a natural affinity with the horses. A week passed with no sign of Holbrook's men, then another. Adam began to hope that perhaps they had lost interest, finding easier targets than a well-defended ranch with alert residents. But he knew better than to grow complacent. Holbrook was not a man who forgot a slight, and both Adam and Faith had wounded his pride as well as his business. As they worked and waited, Adam found himself spending more and more time with Faith. They rode the perimeter together in the mornings, Adam teaching her to read tracks and recognize signs of intruders. In the evenings, they often sat on the porch after supper, talking long into the night about their pasts, their hopes for the future, and everything in between. Adam learned that Faith had a quick mind and a dry wit that emerged more frequently as she relaxed into life at the ranch. She was well-read despite her frontier upbringing, her father having encouraged her education at every opportunity. She spoke of wanting to perhaps teach someday, or maybe study law, dreams that had seemed impossible during her captivity, but now felt within reach again. In turn, Adam found himself sharing things he rarely discussed: his guilt over not being there when his parents fell ill, his fears that his work would never truly make a difference in the face of so much lawlessness, his dream of someday having a home and family of his own. "Why haven't you settled down before now?" Faith asked one evening as they watched the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and purple. "You're not exactly a young man anymore." Her teasing smile took any sting from the words. Adam chuckled. 32 isn't ancient," he protested. Then, more seriously, "I guess I never found the right reason to stop moving. The job always seemed more important than putting down roots." Faith considered this. And now, Adam looked at her, taking in the way the fading light gilded her profile. "Now I'm not so sure," he admitted quietly. Their eyes met, and for a breathless moment, Adam thought he might finally give in to the urge that had been growing stronger with each passing day to pull her close, to discover if her lips were as soft as they looked. But before he could move, the dinner bell rang, calling them back to the house. The moment passed, but the connection between them continued to deepen. Mrs. Daniels watched their growing closeness with approval, occasionally arranging for them to have tasks that would keep them working together. The other residents of the ranch observed with knowing smiles, but respectfully kept their comments to themselves. On a crisp autumn morning nearly 3 weeks after their arrival, Adam and Faith rode out to check on a section of fence in the northern pasture. The day was perfect clear skies, a gentle breeze carrying the scent of pine and wild sage, the mountains standing sentinel in the distance. As they worked together to repair a broken section of the fence, Adam found himself watching Faith more than the task at hand. She had changed in the weeks since he'd rescued her from the auction platform. The haunted look had left her eyes, replaced by quiet confidence. Her hands, once pale and delicate, now showed the calluses of honest work. She had gained weight, filling out the simple dresses Mrs. Daniels had provided, and her skin had taken on a healthy glow from days spent in the sun. "You're staring," Faith observed without looking up from where she was holding a fence post steady. Adam smiled, caught. "Just thinking about how different you look from the day we met." Faith glanced up at him, a shadow briefly crossing her face at the memory. "I was terrified that day," she admitted. "Not just of what might happen to me, but of what I might become if I survived, bitter, broken." "You're neither of those things," Adam said firmly. Faith smiled, the shadow passing. "No, thanks to you." She paused, then added more softly, "I never properly thanked you, did I, for saying those words that day?" Adam frowned slightly, confused. "What words?" "She's worth more than all your gold," Faith quoted. "When you stood up to Holbrook and his men, no one had ever valued me like that before. Not as property, not as a pretty face, but as a person worth fighting for." Adam drove the last nail into the fence post with perhaps more force than necessary, moved by her words. "It was the truth," he said simply. "You are worth more, much more." Faith released the post, brushing wood shavings from her hands. "And what am I worth to you, Adam Hayes?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The directness of the question startled him. Adam set down his hammer, turning to face her fully. "Faith," he began, searching for the right words, "your worth." A shot rang out, the bullet splintering wood just inches from Faith's head. Adam reacted instantly, tackling her to the ground and covering her body with his own as more shots followed. "Crawl to the horses," he commanded, drawing his revolver. "Stay low." Faith nodded, fear in her eyes but determination in the set of her jaw. They made their way to where the horses were tethered, bullets kicking up dirt around them. Adam returned fire, aiming at the flashes he could see from a copse of trees about 100 yards away. They reached the horses, using them as partial cover while Adam continued to exchange fire with their attackers. "Can you make it back to the ranch?" he asked Faith, reloading quickly. "Not without you," she said firmly, taking the reins of both horses. "Faith, I need you to go for help," Adam insisted. "I'll cover you, hold them off." Faith shook her head. "There are at least 4 of them. You won't last long enough for me to bring back help." Before Adam could argue further, a new volley of shots came from a different direction. They were being flanked. "Mount up," Adam decided, helping Faith onto Liberty. We'll make a run for it together. They swung into their saddles and spurred the horses into a gallop, heading not toward the ranch but toward a rocky ridge to the east. Adam knew the terrain from his patrols. There was a narrow pass through the rocks that would be easier to defend than open ground. Bullets whined past them as they rode hard for the ridge. Adam twisted in his saddle to return fire, gratified to see one of their pursuers fall from his horse. But the others kept coming, 4 riders gaining on them across the open pasture. They reached the base of the ridge and began climbing, the horses picking their way carefully over the increasingly rocky terrain. The pursuit slowed as the attackers were forced to dismount and follow on foot, the ground too treacherous for horses at speed. Adam led Faith through the narrow pass he'd remembered, then to a small plateau sheltered by boulders. "We can make a stand here," he said, helping her dismount. "They'll have to come at us one at a time through that gap." Faith nodded, tying the horses securely to a stunted pine. "How many bullets do you have left?" Adam checked his revolver and the spare ammunition in his saddlebag. "Enough for now, but they might try to wait us out." Faith's eyes scanned their surroundings, assessing. "There must be a way down the other side," she reasoned. "If we can hold them off long enough, maybe we can slip away after dark." Adam was impressed again by her tactical thinking. "Good idea, I'll check while you keep watch." He moved carefully along the edge of the plateau, looking for a potential escape route. The far side dropped away steeply, but there was a narrow game trail winding down to the valley below. It would be risky, especially in darkness, but possible. A shot echoed off the rocks, followed by Faith's warning shout. "Adam, they're coming!" Adam hurried back to find Faith crouched behind a boulder, peering cautiously at the pass they had come through. He joined her, spotting movement among the rocks below. "I count 3, Faith whispered. "Where's the 4th? Adam scanned the area, a cold feeling settling in his gut. "Looking for another way up," he guessed. "We need to watch our backs." For the next hour, they played a tense game of cat and mouse with their attackers. The men below made several attempts to rush the pass, only to be driven back by Adam's accurate fire. But ammunition was running low, and the sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the plateau. "We need to move soon," Adam said, checking his revolver again. "I've got 6 shots left, plus whatever's in the rifle." Faith nodded, her face smudged with dirt but determined. "I found some loose rocks we could use to cause a distraction," she suggested. "Roll them down toward the pass while we slip away down the back trail." Adam smiled despite the gravity of their situation. "You'd have made a good ranger." Faith returned his smile briefly. "I had a good teacher in my father, and you—" A shout from below interrupted them, one of the men calling up to them. "Hayes, we know you're up there. Holbrook wants the girl back and your head on a pike. Make it easy on yourself and maybe we'll kill you quick." Adam and Faith exchanged glances. "Charming offer," Faith muttered. "Holbrook can go to hell," Adam shouted back. "And you'll be joining him if you take one more step up that pass." His defiance was met with a barrage of gunfire that ricocheted off the rocks around them. Adam and Faith pressed themselves flat against the ground, waiting for the fusillade to end. When the firing stopped, Faith raised her head cautiously. "Adam," she whispered urgently, "I think I saw someone on the ridge to our right." Adam followed her gaze and caught a glimpse of movement. The 4th man had indeed found another way up and was attempting to flank them. "We need to move. Now." They gathered their few belongings and led the horses toward the game trail Faith had discovered. As they were about to descend, a shot rang out from the ridge, striking Adam in the left shoulder. He staggered, pain blooming hot and sharp. "Adam," Faith cried, catching him before he could fall. Gritting his teeth against the pain, Adam drew his revolver with his right hand. "Go," he urged Faith. "Take the trail down, I'll hold them off." Faith's face hardened with determination. "Not a chance," she said, tearing a strip from her petticoat to bind his wound. "We go together or not at all." Before Adam could argue, more shots came from both the pass and the ridge. They were caught in a crossfire with precious little cover where they stood. Faith made a split-second decision. Grabbing a handful of the loose rocks she'd gathered, she hurled them down the game trail. causing a small avalanche that would hopefully distract their pursuers. Then she helped Adam onto Thunder's back, mounted Liberty herself, and led them both onto the treacherous path. The descent was harrowing, the narrow trail barely wide enough for the horses, who picked their way carefully down the steep slope. Behind them, shouts and gunfire indicated that their pursuers had reached the plateau and discovered their escape. Adam fought to stay conscious, the pain in his shoulder a bright flare with every movement of his horse. Faith led the way, her silhouette against the darkening sky a beacon he fixed his eyes on to keep from slipping into blackness. By the time they reached the valley floor, night had fallen completely. Faith guided them into a dense thicket of trees where they could rest momentarily without being visible from above. "Let me check your wound," she insisted, helping Adam dismount. He leaned heavily against a tree while Faith examined his shoulder by touch more than sight. "The bullet went through," she reported. "That's good, no need to dig it out, but you're losing blood." Adam nodded, his head swimming slightly. "We need to keep moving, they'll find a way down." Faith rebandaged his shoulder with more strips from her petticoat, then helped him back onto Thunder. "The ranch is to the southwest," she said. "If we follow the tree line, we might make it without being spotted." They rode through the night, Faith leading the way with confidence born of necessity. Adam drifted in and out of awareness, the pain in his shoulder a constant companion. Whenever he started to slump in the saddle, Faith would reach over and steady him, her touch an anchor to consciousness. Dawn was breaking when they finally spotted the ranch in the distance. Adam rallied at the sight, sitting straighter in the saddle despite the fire in his shoulder. "We made it," Faith said, relief evident in her voice. As they approached the ranch, shouts went up from the watchtowers Adam had helped establish. Within minutes, riders were galloping out to meet them, Thomas and two ranch hands, rifles ready. "Mr. Hayes, Miss Henderson," Thomas called as he reached them. "We've been worried sick." "Mrs. Daniels sent out search parties when you didn't return yesterday. Holbrook's men," Faith explained quickly. "They ambushed us at the north pasture. Adam's been shot." Thomas's face darkened. "Let's get you both back to the house." "Bill, ride ahead and tell Mrs. Daniels to prepare for a wounded man." The ranch hand galloped toward the main house while Thomas and the other man flanked Adam and Faith protectively. By the time they reached the ranch yard, Mrs. Daniels was waiting on the porch, her face grim but composed. "Bring him inside," she commanded as Thomas helped Adam dismount. "Sarah's preparing the surgery room." Adam tried to protest that he was fine, but the world chose that moment to tilt alarmingly. The last thing he saw before darkness claimed him was Faith's face, pale with worry but still the most beautiful sight he'd ever beheld. He woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar curtains and the sensation of a small, warm hand holding his. Adam turned his head, wincing at the pain the movement caused, to find Faith asleep in a chair beside his bed, her head resting on the mattress near his hand, which she still clasped in her own. The movement woke her. Faith's eyes flew open, relief flooding her features when she saw him looking back at her. "You're awake," she said, her voice rough with sleep and emotion. "How long was I out?" Adam asked, his own voice a dry rasp. Faith reached for a glass of water on the bedside table, helping him take small sips. "Almost 2 days. You lost a lot of blood and the wound got infected. Mrs. Daniels wasn't sure." She trailed off, her hand tightening around his. Adam squeezed back weakly. "Takes more than a bullet to get rid of me," Faith smiled tremulously. "So I see." She hesitated, then added softly, "I was so afraid I'd lost you before I had the chance to tell you." The door opened before she could finish, and Mrs. Daniels entered, her stern expression softening at the sight of Adam awake. "About time you rejoined the land of the living," she said briskly, coming to check his bandages. "Faith hasn't left your side for more than 10 minutes at a stretch." Faith blushed but didn't deny it. "How is he?" she asked anxiously. Mrs. Daniels prodded Adam's shoulder gently, nodding with satisfaction when he winced but didn't cry out. "The fever broke last night, which is a good sign. The wound is clean now and there's no sign of further infection. He'll live, though that arm will be sore for a while." Adam tried to sit up, only to be firmly pushed back by both women. "What about Holbrook's men?" he asked. "Are they still out there?" "Thomas and the hands tracked them back to town," Mrs. Daniels reported. "3 of them, all wounded to some degree. They won't be coming back anytime soon." She paused, then added more gravely, "But that doesn't mean Holbrook won't send others." Adam nodded, grimacing at the pain. "We can't stay here," he said, looking at Faith. "We're putting everyone at risk." "Not you, Adam Hayes," Mrs. Daniels said firmly. "You're not going anywhere until that shoulder heals. As for Miss Henderson, that's her decision to make." Faith's expression was resolute. "I'm not leaving," she said simply. "Not without Adam, and not while he's injured." Mrs. Daniels nodded, as if this was exactly what she'd expected to hear. "Well then, that's settled. You'll both stay until Adam's fit to travel, and we'll keep a sharp watch in the meantime." She moved toward the door, then paused. "Faith, make sure he eats something when he feels up to it. There's broth keeping warm in the kitchen." After Mrs. Daniels left, a comfortable silence fell between Adam and Faith. Outside, the normal sounds of ranch life continued: horses nickering, cattle lowing in the distance, the rhythmic chopping of firewood. "Thank you," Adam said finally, "for saving my life up on that ridge." Faith shook her head. "I think we're even on life-saving now," she said with a small smile. "Though I'd prefer if we didn't need to do it again anytime soon." Adam chuckled, then winced as the movement pulled at his wound. "Agreed." Faith's smile faded, her expression growing serious. "Adam, when I thought I might lose you," she paused, seeming to gather her courage. "It made me realize something I think I've known since that first day in Silver Creek." Adam's heart beat faster despite his weakened state. "What's that?" he asked softly. Faith met his eyes directly, vulnerability and determination mingling in her gaze. "That I'm falling in love with you. I know it's fast and perhaps foolish given all that's happened," but Adam reached up with his good hand, cupping her cheek gently. "It's not foolish," he interrupted. "Not if I'm falling in love with you too." Faith's eyes widened, hope blooming across her features. "You are." Instead of answering with words, Adam drew her face down to his and kissed her. The touch was gentle, almost tentative at first, then deepening as Faith responded, her lips soft and yielding beneath his. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Faith rested her forehead against his. "I guess that answers my question," she murmured, a smile in her voice. Adam stroked her hair, marveling at the silky texture. "I think I started falling for you the moment you stood up to that auctioneer," he admitted. "You were so brave, even in chains." Faith pulled back slightly to look at him. "And I fell for you when you said I was worth more than gold." "No one had ever made me feel so valuable before." "You are valuable," Adam said fiercely. "Not as property, not as a possession, but as the remarkable woman you are." Faith kissed him again, this time with more confidence. "Rest now," she said when they parted. "The sooner you heal, the sooner we can decide what comes next." Adam caught her hand as she started to rise. "I already know what I want to come next," he said seriously. "If you'll have me." Faith's breath caught, understanding dawning in her eyes. "Adam, are you saying?" "Not yet," he clarified. "Not officially. When I ask you properly, I want to be on my feet, not flat on my back in a sick." He smiled ruefully. "But yes, Faith Henderson, that's exactly what I'm saying. I want a future with you, wherever that might lead us." Faith's answering smile was radiant. "Then you'd better heal quickly, Adam Hayes, because my answer is waiting." The next few weeks passed in a blend of recovery and deepening connection. Adam's wound healed steadily under Faith's attentive care and Mrs. Daniels's herbal remedies. By the 3rd week, he was able to leave his bed and move around the house, his arm supported by a sling that Faith had sewn herself. As his strength returned, so did his awareness of the danger that still lurked beyond Willow Haven's boundaries. Holbrook wasn't a man to forgive or forget, and Adam knew their respite was temporary at best. One evening, as he and Faith sat on the porch watching the sunset, Adam broached the subject that had been weighing on his mind. "We need to deal with Holbrook," he said quietly. "Permanently." Faith nodded, unsurprised. "I've been thinking the same thing. We can't spend our lives looking over our shoulders, waiting for him to send more men after us." Adam took her hand, still marveling at how natural it felt to touch her, to be close to her. I've been corresponding with a federal marshal I used to work with, he explained. Sending letters through Mrs. Daniels's contacts in town. He's been building a case against Holbrook for months, and our testimony could be the final piece he needs. Faith's expression grew thoughtful. So we'd need to testify against him in court. Yes, in Denver, Adam confirmed. It would be dangerous. Holbrook has friends in the city, people who might try to prevent us from testifying. Faith squared her shoulders. Then we'll be careful, but I want to do this, Adam. Not just for us, but for all the other women he's victimized. Adam lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. I was hoping you'd say that. They took their plan to Mrs. Daniels, who listened with her usual practical attention to detail. You'll need an escort, she decided. Thomas and 3 of our best hands. I won't have you 2 riding into an ambush on the way to Denver. Adam started to protest that he didn't want to put more of her people at risk, but Mrs. Daniels silenced him with a look. This isn't just your fight anymore, Adam. Holbrook threatened my ranch, my people. We have a stake in seeing him brought to justice, too. And so, as October gave way to November and the mountains received their first dusting of snow, preparations were made for the journey to Denver. Faith insisted on practicing with Adam's spare revolver until she could hit targets consistently, determined not to be defenseless if they were attacked again. You're a natural, Adam observed as she placed 5 shots in a tight grouping on the target he'd set up. Your father taught you well. Faith lowered the gun, a mix of pride and sadness crossing her face. He would have liked you, she said quietly. He always said I should find a man who respected my mind as much as my heart. Adam stepped behind her, wrapping his good arm around her waist. I respect all of you, Faith Henderson. Your mind, your heart, your spirit, your strength. She leaned back against him, fitting perfectly against his chest. And I respect you, Adam Hayes, your honor, your courage, your tenderness. They stood like that for a long moment, savoring the connection between them. Then Faith straightened, a determined glint in her eye. Now show me how to reload faster. If we're riding into danger, I want to be ready. The day before their planned departure for Denver, Adam took Faith riding to a secluded spot overlooking the valley. The late autumn air was crisp, the sky a brilliant blue against the snow-capped peaks. They dismounted near a stand of aspens, their golden leaves catching the sunlight like coins. It's beautiful here, Faith said, turning in a slow circle to take in the panoramic view. Not as beautiful as you, Adam replied, the words simple but sincere. Faith smiled, a light blush coloring her cheeks. After weeks together, he could still make her heart race with a look or a word. Adam took her hand, drawing her attention back to him. His expression was serious, his amber eyes warm with emotion. Faith, there's something I need to ask you. Faith's breath caught as Adam slowly knelt before her, still holding her hand. His injured shoulder made the movement somewhat awkward, but the sincerity in his face more than compensated. I promised I'd do this properly when I was back on my feet, he said, looking up at her. I don't have much to offer you, no land, no fortune, just a life that's likely to have its share of danger and uncertainty. But I can promise you this. I will love you, respect you, and stand beside you for all the days of my life. Tears welled in Faith's eyes as Adam continued, his voice steady despite the emotion behind his words. Faith Henderson, you are worth more than all the gold in Colorado to me. Would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife? Yes, Faith said without hesitation, her voice breaking on the word. Yes, Adam Hayes, I will marry you. Adam rose and pulled her into his arms, kissing her with a passion that left them both breathless. When they finally parted, he reached into his pocket and withdrew a small object. It's not much, he said apologetically, opening his palm to reveal a simple gold band. I had it made from a nugget I panned years ago in a creek not far from here. I've been carrying it all this time, waiting for the right person to give it to. Faith extended her trembling left hand, and Adam slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her all along. It's beautiful, she said softly, watching the gold catch the light. And knowing you've carried it with you, waiting, that makes it more precious than the fanciest diamond. They rode back to the ranch hand in hand, their faces glowing with happiness despite the dangerous journey that lay ahead. Mrs. Daniels took one look at them and knew, her usually stern expression softening into a smile. "Well, it's about time," she said, embracing them both. "I was beginning to think I'd have to lock you two in the root cellar until you came to your senses." That evening, a small celebration was held at the ranch. Mrs. Daniels produced a bottle of fine whiskey she'd been saving for a special occasion, and toasts were raised to the newly engaged couple. Even the normally taciturn Thomas offered his congratulations, telling Adam gruffly that he'd chosen well. As the evening wound down, Adam and Faith stood together on the porch, looking up at the star-filled sky. Tomorrow would bring danger, but tonight was for dreams and promises. "When this is over," Adam said, his arm around Faith's shoulders, "when Holbrook is behind bars and we're free to live without looking over our shoulders, what would you like to do?" Faith considered the question. "I'd like to teach," she said after a moment. "Perhaps start a school somewhere it's needed, and I'd like a home nothing fancy, just a place that's ours." Adam nodded, imagining it. A small ranch, perhaps, enough land for some horses, a garden. "Children," Faith added softly, "someday a family of our own." Adam tightened his arm around her, his heart full. "That sounds perfect." They stood in silence, each picturing the future they hoped to build together. It wouldn't be easy, nothing worthwhile ever was, but they would face whatever came their way together. As they prepared for bed, Adam caught Faith's hand, drawing her attention. "Whatever happens in Denver," he said seriously, "know that you've already given me more than I ever thought to have. You've given me a reason to stop running, a reason to build something lasting." Faith's eyes shone with emotion. "And you've given me back my freedom, my sense of worth. Whatever happens, Adam, we face it together." "Together," he agreed, sealing the promise with a kiss. The next morning dawned clear and cold, perfect for traveling. The small party, Adam and Faith, Thomas, and 3 ranch hands mounted up at first light, their breath forming clouds in the crisp air. Mrs. Daniels stood on the porch, wrapped in a heavy shawl against the cold. "Be careful," she instructed as they prepared to ride out. "And come back safe, both of you. You've got a wedding to plan, after all." Faith leaned down from her saddle to embrace the older woman. "Thank you for everything," she said warmly. "We'll be back before you know it." As they rode away from Willow Haven, Faith glanced back one last time at the ranch that had become a sanctuary to her. Then she turned to face forward, toward Denver, toward justice, and toward the future she and Adam would build together. Adam rode beside her, strong and steady despite his still healing shoulder. Their eyes met, and a world of understanding passed between them. Whatever dangers lay ahead, they would face them as they had faced everything since that fateful day in Silver Creek together, with courage and with love. The journey to Denver took 4 days, the small party making good time despite the increasingly wintry weather. They encountered no trouble on the road, though Adam remained vigilant, never fully relaxing his guard. Faith matched his vigilance, her hand never far from the revolver he had given her, her eyes constantly scanning the trail ahead and behind. Denver greeted them with a bustle and noise that overwhelmed Faith after weeks of ranch life. The city had grown exponentially since the railroad's arrival, buildings of brick and stone rising where mere shanties had stood a decade earlier. Streets teemed with people of all descriptions, businessmen in fine suits, laborers in rough clothing, ladies in fashionable dresses, and cowboys fresh off the range. They made their way to a modest hotel where Marshal James Donovan had arranged rooms for them. The marshal himself met them in a private dining room that evening, a tall, imposing man with iron gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Hayes," he greeted Adam with a firm handshake. "Good to see you in one piece." His gaze shifted to Faith. "And this must be Miss Henderson." Faith met his assessing look steadily. "Yes, though soon to be Mrs. Hayes," she said, a hint of pride in her voice as she displayed her ring. Donovan's weathered face creased in a brief smile. "Congratulations to you both. Now let's talk about what we're facing." Over a simple dinner, the marshal outlined the case against Edmund Holbrook. We've been building evidence for over a year: witnesses, financial records, even some of his former associates who have turned state's evidence to save their own necks. Your testimonies, especially yours, Miss Henderson, as a direct victim of his operation, could be the final piece we need to ensure he hangs." "When is the trial?" Adam asked, his hand finding Faith's under the table. "3 days from now," Donovan replied. "Until then, you'll stay here under guard. Thomas and his men can help with that. I trust your judgment in men, Hayes." Adam nodded, grateful for the marshal's pragmatism. "And Holbrook, where is he now?" "In custody, thankfully," Donovan said. "We arrested him 2 weeks ago on related charges. But he has friends in this city, powerful friends who don't want to see him testify about their involvement in his operations. That's where the danger lies." Faith straightened her shoulders. "I'm not afraid," she said firmly. "I'll tell the court exactly what happened to me and what would have happened if Adam hadn't intervened." Donovan studied her with newfound respect. "You've found yourself a remarkable woman, Hayes." Adam smiled, his eyes never leaving Faith's face. "I know." The 3 days before the trial passed slowly, the enforced confinement wearing on both Adam and Faith, who were accustomed to open spaces and freedom of movement. They spent the time preparing Faith's testimony with Donovan, going over every detail of her kidnapping and near sale at the auction. On the evening before the trial, they stood at the window of their hotel room, looking out at the city lights. Snow had begun to fall, large flakes drifting past the glass and collecting on the sills. "Are you nervous about tomorrow?" Adam asked, his arms encircling Faith from behind. She leaned back against his chest, watching the snow. "A little," she admitted. "Not about testifying. I know exactly what I need to say. I'm more worried about seeing him again, being in the same room with him." Adam tightened his embrace protectively. "I'll be right there with you." "He can't hurt you anymore." Faith turned in his arms to face him. "I know, and after tomorrow we can start thinking about our future." She smiled up at him. "I was thinking perhaps a spring wedding at Willow Haven, if Mrs. Daniels wouldn't mind." Adam returned her smile, his heart swelling with love for this remarkable woman. "Spring sounds perfect, and I know Mrs. Daniels would be honored." Faith reached up to trace the line of his jaw, her touch gentle. "I never expected this, you know. When those men took me from my home, I thought my life was over. Instead, I found you and a new beginning." "We found each other," Adam corrected softly, "and whatever happens tomorrow, that's what matters most." He lowered his lips to hers, kissing her with all the tenderness and passion she inspired in him. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but tonight was theirs alone. The courthouse was packed the next morning, the gallery filled with curious onlookers drawn by the sensational nature of the case. Adam and Faith arrived under escort, Marshal Donovan meeting them at a side entrance to avoid the crowds. "Ready?" he asked Faith, his expression encouraging despite his gruff demeanor. Faith nodded, her hand tightly clasping Adam's. She wore her best dress, the blue one that matched her eyes, her honey blonde hair neatly arranged beneath a modest hat. She looked every inch the respectable young woman she was, though Adam could feel the slight tremor in her hand that betrayed her nerves. "You'll do fine," he assured her as they were led to their seats near the front of the courtroom. "Just tell the truth exactly as it happened." The proceedings began with the usual formalities. The judge, a stern-faced man named Henderson, called the court to order. The prosecutor outlined the charges against Edmund Holbrook: kidnapping, human trafficking, fraud, and a host of lesser crimes that together painted a picture of a man without conscience or moral boundaries. And then Holbrook himself was brought in. Faith's hand tightened painfully around Adam's as the mining magnate entered, flanked by guards. He looked smaller somehow than Adam remembered, his fine suit hanging loosely on his frame after weeks in jail, his trademark handlebar mustache less meticulously groomed. Holbrook's eyes swept the courtroom, narrowing when they landed on Adam and Faith. A flash of hatred crossed his face before he composed himself, taking his seat beside his attorney with forced dignity. The prosecution called several witnesses, first former employees of Holbrook's who testified to his illegal operations. a bookkeeper who detailed the financial aspects of his human trafficking business, a doctor who had examined women rescued from one of his shipments and documented their mistreatment. Faith was called to the stand just before noon. She walked forward with her head high, though Adam could see the tension in every line of her body. After being sworn in, she sat facing the courtroom, her eyes briefly meeting Adam's before focusing on the prosecutor. "Miss Henderson," the prosecutor began, "could you please tell the court, in your own words, what happened to you in September of this year?" Faith's voice was clear and steady as she recounted her ordeal: her father's murder, her abduction from their home, the days spent in a wagon with other captured women, the humiliation of being examined like livestock, and finally the auction in Silver Creek where Adam had intervened. "And what do you believe would have happened to you if Mr. Hayes had not intervened?" the prosecutor asked. Faith's gaze flicked briefly to Holbrook, who was watching her with cold eyes. "I would have been sold to the highest bidder," she said firmly. "Used however they saw fit, with no regard for my humanity or my rights as a free woman." "And the defendant, Mr. Holbrook, what was his role in this?" "He was the one running the auction," Faith stated unequivocally. "The one who claimed my father owed him money, though that was a lie. The one who gave orders to the men who took me and who later tried to kill Mr. Hayes and me at Willow Haven Ranch." Holbrook's attorney objected to this last statement as speculative, but the damage was done. The jury had heard, and from their expressions, they believed her. The defense attorney's cross-examination was aggressive, attempting to undermine Faith's credibility by suggesting she had gone willingly with Holbrook's men, that she had fabricated the story of her father's murder, that her relationship with Adam had colored her testimony. Faith remained poised throughout, refusing to be rattled. When the attorney implied that she and Adam had conspired against Holbrook for financial gain, her eyes flashed with righteous anger. "Mr. Hayes risked his life to save me from being sold like an animal," she said, her voice vibrating with conviction. "He has shown me nothing but respect and kindness. If you're suggesting there was any ulterior motive beyond basic human decency, then you understand neither the man nor the situation." Adam's testimony followed Faith's, his account corroborating hers while adding details about his longer investigation into Holbrook's operations. He described other auctions he had witnessed, other women he had helped escape, the network of corruption that allowed such practices to continue despite their illegality. By the time the day's proceedings ended, the case against Holbrook seemed overwhelming. The jury's faces reflected disgust and outrage as the evidence mounted. Even Holbrook's attorney appeared less confident than he had at the start of the day. As they left the courthouse under Marshal Donovan's protection, Faith finally allowed some of her tension to show, leaning heavily against Adam's side. "You were magnificent," he told her, his arm secure around her waist. "Your father would have been so proud of you today." Faith managed a tired smile. "I just told the truth. I only hope it's enough." "It will be," Adam assured her. "Holbrook's finished, Faith. After today, I don't think there's a jury in Colorado that would acquit him." Back at the hotel, Faith was too keyed up to rest despite her exhaustion. They ate a light supper in their room, then sat together by the fire, Faith nestled against Adam's side as they watched the flames dance. "What happens after the verdict?" she asked quietly. "Assuming he's found guilty," Adam stroked her hair thoughtfully. "Donovan will want statements for the other cases. There are at least 3 other territories building cases against Holbrook's operations. But we don't need to stay for those. We can go back to Willow Haven, start planning our wedding, our future." Faith nodded, her fingers absently tracing patterns on Adam's chest. "I'd like that. And afterward, where will we make our home?" Adam had been considering this question for days. "I've been thinking about that land near Cottonwood Creek, the valley we passed through on our way to Willow Haven. It's good land with water and timber, not too far from Mrs. Daniels if we need help, but far enough to be our own place." Faith lifted her head to look at him, her eyes bright with interest. "You've really thought about this?" Adam nodded. "I have." I've spent years drifting, Faith, never staying anywhere long enough to put down roots, but with you, I want roots, I want a home, a place that's ours. Faith's smile was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. I want that too, she said softly, very much. They sealed the agreement with a kiss that held all the promise of their future together, a future that, after tomorrow's verdict, they could finally begin to build without fear. The jury's deliberation was surprisingly brief. By noon the following day, they had reached their verdict, guilty on all counts. Judge Harrison's sentence was equally swift and severe. Edmund Holbrook would hang for his crimes. As the sentence was pronounced, Holbrook finally lost his composure, shouting threats and obscenities until the bailiffs dragged him from the courtroom. His eyes, filled with impotent rage, found Faith and Adam in the gallery. "This isn't over," he snarled as he was pulled toward the door. "You'll never be safe." Never. Faith's hand found Adam's, squeezing tightly, but her expression remained calm even as Holbrook was finally removed from the courtroom, his threats still echoing. "It is over," she said quietly. "For him, at least." Marshal Donovan approached them as the courtroom began to clear. "Fine job, both of you," he said with gruff approval. "Your testimonies were crucial. Holbrook will hang within the month, and his associates are already scrambling to save themselves by offering information." "What about his threats?" Adam asked, still concerned. "He has men who are loyal to him, who might try to carry out revenge on his behalf." Donovan nodded, understanding the worry. "Most of his operation is being rounded up as we speak, but I won't lie to you, there might be some who slip through the net." "You'll need to stay vigilant for a while." Faith straightened her shoulders. "We will," she assured him, "but we won't live in fear. That would be letting him win, even from the grave." Donovan smiled slightly, impressed by her resilience. "You've got spirit, Miss Henderson. Hayes is a lucky man." "The luckiest," Adam agreed, his eyes never leaving Faith's face. They left Denver the following day, Thomas and the ranch hands providing escort once more. The journey back to Willow Haven was uneventful, the winter landscape peaceful under a blanket of fresh snow. As they rode, Adam and Faith discussed their plans: the wedding in spring, the land they hoped to purchase near Cottonwood Creek, the life they would build together. Mrs. Daniels welcomed them back with open arms and the news that she had already begun preparations for a spring wedding. "May is lovely here," she declared. "The wildflowers will be in bloom and the weather should be fine for an outdoor ceremony." Life at Willow Haven settled into a pleasant routine through the winter months. Adam's shoulder healed completely, and he worked alongside the ranch hands, learning skills he would need for his own place. Faith divided her time between helping in the house and teaching the children of the ranch workers, confirming her natural talent for education. In January, news reached them that Edmund Holbrook had been hanged just after Christmas, his appeals denied. The final threat to their happiness had been eliminated, leaving them free to look forward without constantly looking over their shoulders. February brought a letter from Marshal Donovan, informing them that the last of Holbrook's operation had been dismantled. The women who had been rescued were being helped to rebuild their lives, and the corrupt officials who had enabled Holbrook's crimes were facing charges of their own. "It's really over," Faith said as she and Adam sat by the fire after reading the letter. "We're truly free now." Adam pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her temple. "We've been free since the moment you decided not to let Holbrook define your future," he said softly. "Everything since has just been making it official." As winter gave way to spring, Adam rode to Cottonwood Creek to inquire about the land they had seen. To his delight, it was available and within their means, thanks to the reward money from Holbrook's capture and Adam's savings from years of bounty hunting. "It's ours," he told Faith upon his return, lifting her off her feet in his excitement. 160 acres with water rights and enough timber for a good-sized cabin. We can start building as soon as the wedding is over." Faith's joy matched his own. "Our home," she said wonderingly, "our future." May arrived with sunshine and wildflowers, just as Mrs. Daniels had predicted. The day of the wedding dawned clear and warm, the mountains standing sentinel in the distance as guests began to arrive at Willow Haven. Adam waited nervously beneath an arch of wildflowers and ribbons that the women of the ranch had constructed. Thomas stood beside him as his best man, unusually smart in a clean shirt and polished boots. Marshal Donovan had made the journey from Denver to attend, along with several other lawmen Adam had worked with over the years. A hush fell over the gathering as Faith appeared in the doorway of the main house, escorted by Mrs. Daniels. Her dress was simple but elegant, ivory silk that Mrs. Daniels had ordered specially from Denver. Her honey-blonde hair was adorned with wildflowers, and she carried a bouquet of the same blooms. But it was her face that captivated Adam, radiant with happiness, her blue eyes shining with love as they found his across the yard. This was the woman who had stood with dignity on an auction platform, who had faced down armed men with courage, who had nursed him back to health with gentle hands, who had testified fearlessly against her captor. And now she was walking toward him, ready to join her life with his. The ceremony was brief but meaningful, the preacher from Cottonwood Creek speaking of love, respect, and partnership as Adam and Faith exchanged vows and rings. When they were pronounced husband and wife, the cheer that went up from the assembled guests startled birds from nearby trees. The celebration continued well into the evening with food, music, and dancing. As the sun began to set, casting long golden rays across the valley, Adam led Faith away from the festivities to a quiet spot overlooking the ranch. "Happy, Mrs. Hayes?" he asked, drawing her into his arms. Faith's smile was answer enough, but she spoke the words anyway. "Happier than I ever thought possible, Mr. Hayes." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. Tomorrow they would begin the journey to their new land, to the home they would build together. There would be challenges ahead. No doubt the frontier was never an easy place to carve out a life. But they would face whatever came their way together, with the strength and love they had forged through adversity. "You know," Adam said thoughtfully, "when I stood up in that auction yard and said you were worth more than all their gold, I had no idea how true those words would prove to be." Faith leaned her head against his shoulder, her hand finding his. "And when you freed me from those chains, I never dreamed I was taking the first steps toward a love like this." As twilight deepened around them, Adam Hayes held his wife close, grateful beyond words for the twist of fate that had brought them together. From the darkest circumstances had come the brightest future, a future they would build together, day by day, with love as their foundation and freedom as their most cherished possession. In the years that followed, Adam and Faith Hayes built the life they had dreamed of during those winter evenings at Willow Haven. Their cabin, which grew into a proper house as time passed, stood in the peaceful valley near Cottonwood Creek. They raised horses and a few cattle, planted an orchard that Faith tended with loving care, and established a small school that quickly became known for its excellent education. Children came first, a son they named after Faith's father, then twin daughters who had Adam wrapped around their little fingers from the moment they were born. The Hayes family became a respected fixture in the community, known for their fairness, generosity, and unwavering commitment to justice. Adam never returned to bounty hunting, finding greater satisfaction in raising his family and helping to build a community where the law was respected and people looked out for one another. Faith's school grew to accommodate children from throughout the valley, her dream of being an educator fulfilled beyond her expectations. They never forgot the circumstances that had brought them together. Each year, on the anniversary of the day Adam had freed Faith from the auction platform, they made a donation to a fund Mrs. Daniels had established to help women escaping difficult situations. And occasionally, when a woman with haunted eyes and a story of captivity found her way to their door, the Hayes family opened their home without question, offering sanctuary and a chance at a new beginning. On their 10th wedding anniversary, as they sat on the porch of their home watching their children play in the yard, Faith took Adam's hand in hers, the simple gold band on her finger glinting in the sunlight. "You ever think about how differently our lives might have gone?" she asked. "If you hadn't been in Silver Creek that day," Adam considered the question, his thumb absently tracing circles on her palm. Sometimes, he admitted. But then I look at what we've built together, at our children, at all the good we've been able to do, and I can only be grateful for whatever fate or providence led me there. Faith smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder in a gesture that had become familiar and cherished over the years. You said I was worth more than gold, she reminded him, but what we found together, that's the true treasure. Adam couldn't argue with that. As the sun set over their valley, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, he wrapped his arm around his wife's shoulders and counted himself the richest man in Colorado, not in gold or silver, but in love, family, and the freedom they had fought so hard to secure. And that, as Faith had said, was the true treasure worth more than all the gold in the world.